Um, I briefly mentioned this, and this is where I'm going to mention about user access, so the user roles and data access groups. So firstly, with access control, one of the benefit of using REDCap is that you have the ability to give very set permission to the granular level for all your users. So for example, here you see there are permission settings for project design and setup, so that's like creation of forms and so on. Manage user access, so that's user rights. Data access groups, so that's I'll touch on briefly, but it's mainly used for like multi-site studies and so on. Data export, so data export, actually I have a tip and encourage is that all users within your projects should probably not have full data set export access by default. And the reason for that is with the remove all tagged identifier fields or de-identify, it would help you automatically remove or scramble all the fields that are flagged as identifiers. This way you have an additional safeguard that you won't accidentally have identifiers leaving REDCap and it's not intentionally, that's not your intent. If there are, and here I also wrote it here, is that if there are cases where you do need to export those identifiers, I would suggest for a temporary basis, change that person's access to have full data set access. They do their export and then very quickly revert back their access to either de-identify or remove all tagged identifier fields. This is just I strongly encourage that, and it's just an additional safeguard to keep your data safe. On your right-hand side, you see there's other different features and access. So for example, the data import tool, so that allows people to import CSV files, Excel files, and to import the data in batches. Logging, so that's the audit trail, the audit logs of all the activities within your project. So you may not want everyone to have access to that logging page because it will could include a lot of sensitive information because it's very detailed in terms of what data was entered by who at what time. Similarly with file repository, especially if you're using the e-consent framework that we touched on earlier, all your PDF files from the e-consent framework are stored in the file repository. If not, everyone within your project should have access to those PDFs with identifiers. I would not give them access to the file repository. And then we have create records. So that's anyone that needs access to actually create a brand new record. Rename records, that's for changing their study ID, if it ever a case for that. And delete records. So rename record and delete record usually is reserved for research managers or PIs who are managing the whole project. And if ever there's a need for that, let's say a record was created accidentally, probably your process would be to contact the research manager and they would delete it or remove it with the preferred protocol. And you also can control access base for each of the forms. So in this specific example, you have someone that can't see anything in the demographics. So that's typically where you have all your identifiers, maybe your date of birth, maybe your name, maybe the email address of the participants. So they have no access to it, but they have read-only access to a couple of the forms and ability to enter data for the monthly data time points. Data access groups. So data access groups, it's mainly for studies that are multi-site studies. So that's where you have data collection happening at multiple sites, but there's a requirement where people that are, especially research team members that are at one site should only see data within their site and cannot see data from another site. So that's where data access group comes in. So in this example, team A and team B, any data records that's created by team A, team B cannot see, and vice versa. Anyone that is not assigned to a group, so in this case me, they will be able to see all of the data. So that's typically the PI or the main research manager who have been granted access, or ethics or privacy office had given them their permission that they can see data cross study because of the role.